Hello everybody, Stephen D here today, and as you see for the title of my video, it's a discussion about why Trump's right, if the election is rigged. This is not meant to endorse Mr. Trump. He's a despicable person. I will not be voting for him. I don't encourage anyone to vote for him. But he, despite the numerous and absurd things he says, he's got one thing right. This election was rigged, and it will be rigged in November, is what I'm going to predict, just based on what we've seen. And the media is in on this. So, where's the proof, everybody? Okay, where's the proof? You want to hear where the proof is? Where's the evidence? Those of you who want to call bullshit on me. Well, let's start with all the election fraud studies that have been done. There's been several of them. 2 Stanford studies by Barragan and Geijesl. One showing that discrepancies between the exit polls and the actual result, the voting results in the primaries overwhelmingly favored Clinton. And also a second study in which they showed that the pre-election polls, once again, were way off compared to what the final vote results were, and they were particularly way off in counties in which e-voting machines were used. There's also been several other studies that have been done. The most comprehensive is by Election Justice USA, report they issued called Democracy Lost, a report on the fatally flawed Democratic Party, 2016 Democratic Party primaries. All these are linked below. You can go to them, you can read them, you can review them yourself. But they speak about not just, the issues of whether, the voting machines were, had an effect, but also the issues of voter suppression. In other words, people actively prevented, from being able to vote for Bernie Sanders in a number of states. Voter purging. People who were purged from the voting rolls in numerous states. My state, New York, for example, everyone's well aware that there were 120,000 people purged from the rolls just in one Brooklyn, just in Brooklyn, New York. But this was a case that occurred over and over again in many states. Also, the complete disaster that was the California primary, in which many efforts were made to prevent independent voters, people that were called affiliated party or non-party affiliated voters, from voting for Bernie Sanders, and forcing them to vote provisionally, and forcing those, and those votes, of course, often were never counted. And there's also the issue of like I said previously, voter fraud in general. And this has been shown that it was, that it was a coordinated effort by the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign. And again, numerous Wikileaks releases have shown that the DNC collaborated with the Clinton campaign. They collaborated with the media on talking points. They pushed anti-Sanders talking points. The media, there's a Harvard study out that shows, and again, these are all links that are below, that show that lack of coverage of Bernie Sanders' campaign had a very dramatic impact on his ability to win the primary. And it's amazing to me. We have these 2 stories out here right now. One of the stories is that of all the stupid things Donald Trump is saying, stupid and outrageous, his choice to pick up a fight with the parents of a Muslim soldier who was killed in our war on terror. But there's a competing story about, that's out there that the media simply has dropped. They've stopped it all. Or if they're discussing it at all, they're only talking about it in terms of, well, it was the result of, Russians, communists, infiltrators trying to manipulate our democracy. Well, first, that's absurd, because it doesn't matter what the source of the WikiLeaks releases are, and Julian Assange has specifically stated that the Russians are not his source. There were no Russian hackers that ever sourced it. Because of that, I've got a link to that below this video. But even if it was true, the substance of the email shows very clearly that the DNC was not neutral. They violated their own rules of neutrality. They violated, various other rules to benefit Hillary Clinton, particularly with respect to the Hillary Victory Fund, which supposedly was raising money for state parties when it was, in fact, raising money for Hillary Clinton. So you've got one candidate who has been exposed as lying about her emails, recklessly using her emails, private email server to, potentially, allow foreign governments to obtain top secrets and other confidential information of the U.S. government. And then you've got Donald Trump, who just is an idiot who says stupid stuff. What is the media focusing on right now? Well, I listen to NPR every day, usually when I'm traveling to go get a coffee and go to the grocery store. And over the last week, I have not heard any stories from them about the many problems with and the issues with the Sanders with the Clinton campaign. I haven't heard any coverage of the incredible abuses and censoring and just mistreatment of Sanders delegates to present a false picture of Democratic Party unity at the DNC convention. None of that's been discussed in the major media. No, the NPR has been focused completely on Donald Trump. I mean, I think I've listened to the Diane Rehm show for the last several days, and every day there's been a panel about something something anti-Trump. Why hasn't Trump released his tax reports? Why is Donald Trump trying to sabotage his own campaign? Blah blah blah. And those are legitimate. Again, I'm not saying they shouldn't be running these stories, but that's all they're running. You're not seeing any stories about any of the fraudulent or abusive or unethical conduct by Hillary Clinton. In fact, she recently just deliberately lied on national TV, saying that she'd been exonerated by FBI Director Comey. Well, we all know that's not true. Far from it. He did not exonerate her. He just said that I'm not going to recommend an indictment. But he specifically called her out on having lied about a number of items, lies that she continued to repeat. That she had approval for her, private server when she did not. That she complied with the issues respecting confidential information on her emails when she did not. And yet it's like there's a media blackout. I mean, at least on traditional media. Traditional, I should say, by traditional I mean at this point media that is owned and controlled by major media conglomerates, for-profit corporate conglomerates. You will not find on any of these, maybe occasionally on Fox, but you will not find, other than that, anyone covering any stories that are anti-Hillary. They're all anti-Trump, and it's been a barrage this last week. So, let me just tell you what I think is going to happen in November. And it's based not on me being particularly psychic or prophetic, but just from having seen what happened with the Sanders campaign this year. Hillary Clinton has more money than Donald Trump. She has more big money donors, particularly from billionaires, and she's getting more and more of them, including former, Bush supporters and normally heavy GOP donors suddenly coming over and saying they're going to support Hillary Clinton. And do you honestly think that they're going to allow us to change their preferred candidate after they've invested all these millions of dollars in her? Really? Do you really? If you believe that, well, do you believe in fairies? Like, do you believe in the Tooth Fairy? Do you believe in the Easter Bunny? Because it's on that kind of level. There's been studies shown that in Congress, the bills that are passed, favor corporations and corporate lobbyists at a very high percentage, and bills that are favored by the majority of Americans do not get passed. So we don't get our voices heard. The only way that, for example, that the net neutrality, which would have allowed the major telecom communications companies to essentially have a tiered system in which it would limit your ability to access the internet and to put out competing narratives about the news or about anything really. Even small businesses would have trouble in a net neutrality situation. That was only stopped because there were other corporations, big corporations, that fought it. It wasn't because the people thought, this sucks. Nobody, conservatives or Republicans or Democrats or liberals or progressives or what have you, want to limit or have our we don't want to become China, which limits our access to certain sites, makes it harder to which censors essentially what's on the internet. We don't want to be one of those countries, and yet that is exactly what these bills were trying to do. And I said again, the only reason it didn't pass is because there were two groups of corporations fighting it out, and Congress, wasn't going to piss off one of them over the other. So we got lucky there. So my feeling is you're going to see the continued. This is my prediction. You're going to see continued anti-Trump campaign in the media, just like you saw when Sanders became a threat to the Hillary campaign. For example, at one point, Washington Post literally had 16 articles up within 16 hours that were anti-Sanders in March, just prior to some of the biggest primaries, that were coming up in New York, Pennsylvania, and so forth. And that's hardly a surprise. And I think you're going to see that again. Now, certainly Trump deserves to be criticized. I don't know if he's the least qualified person to ever run for president, but he's certainly giving everybody reason to believe so. And he's even giving people reason to believe that, there are conspiracy theories out there that he was a plant by the Clintons to deliberately, sink the Republicans. And I don't believe that, because that would show a measure of foresight on the part of Hillary and Bill Clinton that despite their renowned, political prowess, even I don't believe that. I don't think they could have expected that Trump would do as well as he did. But it is true that Bill Clinton encouraged Trump to run. So I can see why there are some people who have that, because Trump he's been a loose cannon. The only reason he won his party's nomination was that the media overwhelmingly gave him coverage more than anyone else, and there was no particular establishment Republican candidate which anyone could unify around. So now we're down to these, quote, two major party candidates, and essentially the third party candidates are being ignored. The occasional sop is being thrown to them. I believe it was a town hall for Gary. Sorry for forgetting the name, but the Libertarian Party candidate the other day, and Jill Stein is going to get one on CNN, a town hall. But I think the media otherwise is going to pretty much do what they've been doing all along, which is not cover either the Libertarian Party or the Green Party, and we'll be lucky if either of those candidates can obtain the 15% level in the polls, which is which the networks have established as the standard for being included in the debates. It's an arbitrary standard. There's no reason why we couldn't have the two most significant third parties in our system also at a debate with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. I would welcome that. I'd welcome if even one of them got in, Jill Stein or the Libertarian candidate, just simply so we don't have the kind of shit show that we're going to get with a Trump-Sanders debate. Trump-Clinton debate, where the issues will be ignored, or they'll talk about personal attacks and all sorts of crap, where they'll lie their asses off. So, what's going to happen in November? Hillary Clinton is going to win the election. If she hasn't already socked it away, if there's any chance of potential that she would lose certain critical states, such as Ohio, then the same thing that happened to John Kerry in 2004 will happen to Donald Trump this year. Suddenly, there will be a massive wave of late returns, overwhelmingly in support of Hillary Clinton, that will turn the tide and allow her to win the election. But the way Trump's going and the way he's campaigning, it probably won't even be necessary to do that. But it could happen. So just ask yourself, if you're not already convinced, whether or not, if you have questions about whether this election was rigged and whether it will be rigged, check the links at the bottom of this video. Read all of them. Read them carefully. Do further research on your own. I couldn't do as much research as I wanted before I did this video, but there's certainly far more out there that demonstrates that this campaign has been it's been a selection, not an election. And what we're going to end up with is Hillary Clinton as our president in November. regardless of how people actually vote. And I think you can lay that at the feet of the media and at the feet of people who are supporting, massively supporting, with big money donations, Hillary Clinton. And these are billionaires, it's Wall Street, telecommunications industry, big pharma, fossil fuel industry. Some of the, Monsanto, some of the worst corporations, and corporate interests on the planet right now, whose only concern is for profit, and who have no concern for the future beyond their next 3-month, quarterly statement, to show that their stocks are up. Why do you think the stock market has dramatically risen despite the fact that earnings reports are down? That's not a coincidence. And it's happened before in previous elections where, there was an incumbent who was going out, who wanted to do his best to benefit either himself or his party's candidate, and so you're not seeing anything that's going to change that, even though the economic indicators for most Americans are atrocious. So that said, I'm not asking anybody to give up, the fight for a change, dramatic change in our political system, but just realize what you're up against. You're up against hackable voting machines. You're up against people that will change your registration if they need to, or say you're not. They could literally, wipe you off the registration books. So think about that. That's all I have to say. Have a nice weekend. I'm planning to watch a lot of Olympics because that's what my daughter wants me to do with her. So take care. Signing off, Stephen D.